We got a number of questions in about your story, and I got to hear a little bit of it over lunch, but I would love for you to maybe just share a little bit. Here was some of the language that came in. One person wanted to know what your most defining moment was, like that kind of moved the needle for you in conversion to Christianity. What convinced you? What persuaded you? So, yeah, maybe you could share some of that.
My. How to do this in...
and you have 30 seconds.
30 seconds, that's exactly right. This is the elevator testimony.
That's right.
I would say there were multiple defining moments for me. And then I'll answer what was, that second question, what was most convincing for me. So the first defining moment was being up during Ramadan, reading the Quran, preparing for the day's fast, and reading Surah Maryam, which is the surah, the chapter on Mary and the virgin birth, and wondering, why is the Quran talking about the virgin birth? If Jesus is virgin born, how is he not uniquely the Son of God? And in that moment, there was like an awareness that came over me of many things in the Quran that the Quran was admitting or stating, but seemed to be saying too much by even that admission. So the number of times that Jesus is called Isa al-Masih in the Quran, Jesus the Messiah, right? Well, the Messiah is a Jewish concept, right? And it has a particular meaning. He's the anointed one who's going to come and save us. And so here the Quran is referring to Jesus by that title, and seemingly unaware of the implications of that. Or references to the Holy Spirit in the Quran, which Muslims try to explain away as a reference to an angel or things of that sort. But grammatically, in some of the ayats, that just can't be the case, because you find statements like this, the Holy Spirit and the angels, right? Distinguishing them. Yeah. And I'm like, that's Trinitarian language, right? And so that was the first sort of aha moments, like, oh, there are problems in my book, right?
Which is a huge thing to admit.
Oh, that's massive.
If the book literally came
that's
directly
massive,
dictated.
right?
Yeah.
That's massive. And so I cast about, I didn't get what I found to be satisfactory answers to those kinds of problems. The second sort of moment was a water cooler conversation. At work, I've got some colleagues at work that I've gone to college with, others that I've just gotten to know. And I don't know why we were talking about this, but we were talking about world leaders we respect. So somebody was talking about Mahatma Gandhi, somebody was talking about Martin Luther King and different things. And Tracy Ray, who I'd gone to college with, she said, without any sense of flattery or anything else, she says, there's nobody I respect more than Thabiti. It's like, stop it. Stop it.
Yeah.
Stop it. Like, what do you mean? She said, no. She said, you don't curse, you don't drink, you're not in the clubs, you treat Christy well. I mean, she just started talking about these things. And the more she talked about these external things, the more convicted and corrupt I felt.
Wow.
Because it was like, oh, you don't know my lust.
Yeah.
You don't know my anger. It was the dawning of the awareness that my problem was in here.
Wow.
That I could be all these things externally and yet walking around just filled with anger and all kinds of things, right? And so that sent me kind of like, oh, snap, I don't know what I'm going to do for righteousness. I didn't have the words for that, but I was like, I'm doing all the right things and I'm not righteous. I don't know what I'm going to do for that. And then I guess another moment that was, all of this is happening within the span of about a year or two. My wife and I, when I left Islam, we didn't convert immediately to Christianity. I spent about a year bouncing between agnosticism and atheism. And in that year, my wife and I got pregnant with what was to be our first child, and we miscarried 3 months into the pregnancy, and God humbled us deeply. And it was in the pain of that miscarriage that I finally had ears to hear the Lord calling me, and stumbled upon a television preacher who was just preaching verse by verse through 2 Timothy. And it was like somebody had rewritten the Bible. And God began to draw me by his word. The word had life. And eventually, a year later or so, wind up in this man's church outside of Washington, D.C. And he preaches from Exodus. He preaches from the golden calf passage. And he preaches against idolatry and false gods. And preaches, this problem of righteousness. How am I going to be righteous with a holy God? And he preaches Jesus Christ on the cross, and in God's kindness, my wife and I both came to faith in the Lord that Sunday morning.
That's amazing. That's amazing.
Praise be to God.